Even I have to speak in the mic.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Very good. Welcome to you. Thank you.
Sachin, come in. Okay. Friends, I am happy to welcome Professor Claudia Lange from Dresden Technological University, Germany, and Dr. Sachin Labde from Mumbai University. He is from the English department. She also teaches English in Germany. Dr. Lange is an old friend of India. I say old because she has been, interacting with us, specifically Pune University and Mumbai University, since the last 20 years. She has undertaken several research projects. Right now, she is working on a project, and some of her visits are part of that. We are extremely happy to have you here in Ahmednagar and in Ahmednagar College, and specifically with us here in the English department. On behalf of all of you, my colleagues from various humanities and social sciences departments, my colleagues in the English department, and all my UG and PG students, undergraduate and postgraduate students, I thank you for being part of this informal session, and also thank Sachin for facilitating it. Dr. Lange, what we have planned is that we thought, here in India, we in most parts of India, especially in the state universities and in the colleges in the provincial towns such as ours, we are right now going through a major crisis in both the humanities and social sciences education, which we call as arts faculty here. And all our colleagues, we share this anxiety about, what is the significance of what we are doing. It is both a case of quantity as well as quality, because number of students who take admissions also has dropped. But more importantly, what has happened is that students who pass out with arts as their subject aren't really able to find good employment. Most of them are underemployed. So these are some of the aspects of the crisis that we are facing. Obviously, I'm only limiting myself to one or two. So these are some of the anxieties that we have. So I thought I'll also invite my colleagues from, in fact, other colleges also are also here. Neighboring colleges are also here. So first, we would like to listen to you and get your perspective on what is happening in the field of humanities education elsewhere. And then maybe we can exchange with you our concerns, and Sachin also can perhaps give some interventions. So friends, thank you all for joining us. And on behalf of all of you, once again, I'll welcome Professor Lange to this session. This will be an informal session. Please feel free to, after we listen to Professor Lange, feel free to ask any question. You can ask the question in any language, okay? And you can perfectly ask the question in Marathi or Hindi, and we will translate it to for her benefit, and we will proceed that way. Let us keep the conversation going, and let not language be a barrier. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Lange, over to you.
So,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Before that, I would like to ask Sachin to introduce Professor Lange to the
Yes, I actually absolutely have no interest in snatching that moment that you're going to spend with Professor Lange. But it's been 23 years, and I have had 23 years of silence that I have not come to my department. This is the first time that I'm visiting my department, and I'm very happy, probably also a bit emotional. But then I'm going to spare you that emotional outburst. and stick to my script that I'm going to briefly introduce Professor Claudia Lange to you. So Professor Lange is an accomplished, I mean, I'm not saying this for the sake of saying it, but she's truly an accomplished linguist with a diverse educational background. She obtained her postgraduate diploma in linguistics. Please correct me if I'm wrong at any point of time. From the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. She then went on to earn her masters in English, German, and philosophy from Freie Universität, that is Free University in Berlin, in 1994, followed by a PhD in English linguistics from the same institution in 2004. In 2010, she completed her habilitation at Dresden University of Technology. Professor Lange has held various academic positions throughout her career. From 2000 to 2010, she served as a lecturer in English linguistics at the Institute of English and American Studies, Technical University Dresden. She also worked as a guest lecturer at the University of Pune, which is today known as Savitribai Phule Pune University. That was in year 2004, and she's celebrating 20 years of her romance with not only University of Pune, but India. And I'm a proud witness of this
Victim.
this journey of 20 years, and I'm sure nothing is going to stop her to continue to love this country and people of this country, and her passion for Indian English. Her research interests are wide-ranging and include varieties of English, particularly post-colonial varieties, language ideology and policy in South and Southeast Asia, language contact, standardization, discourse pragmatics, and grammaticalization. Professor Lange's work has made significant contributions to the field of linguistics and continues to inspire students and researchers like me. I really feel an honor to have this association with Professor Lange, and I hope I'll continue to have that advantage and privilege of knowing you. So that's brief introduction of Professor Lange. We are all looking forward to your take on humanities and crisis in humanities in education in 21st century. As you said, you shortened it by saying some observations from Germany. So over to you, Professor Lange.
Thank you very much to both of you for your kind introductions. And it's true, the first time, that was in January 2004 when I came to Pune. When I set foot on Pune soil, everybody was so kind to me that I just couldn't help to come back every time. And this journey, as you said, is continuing. And again, I'm setting my feet on new ground. Thank you very much for this invitation. So what I would like to tell you something about the German education system. Some of you might know something about it, but I give you a general overview, and you will find that it has some odd structures, and I will explain these, and these have indirectly to do with the crisis of the humanities, and I give you an historical perspective on why the German education system, with its strong emphasis on the humanities, even though they also undergo some kind of commodification, and then we can talk about that, why the system is shaped as it is. And I would really be happy to see, so this will be a very German perspective, but then we'll see, I'm also focusing on some German philosophical ideas, and then we can see what kind of a joint perspective or discussion we can have from that. Okay, the German education system, in general, German education is free. And it is a basic human right, as everywhere, but it also means it's an obligation. If you don't send your child to school, the police will fetch it. So there is not a single child. There's no homeschooling in Germany. Everybody has to go to school. And it's free at all levels. University is free, so you're welcome to study in Germany. The only problem is you have to learn German to do that. Yes. But apart from that, it's free. And the organization, it is organized according to the federal states. So we have 16 federal states, like you have federal states, and there is no national education policy. So there is no central policy. Every state decides for itself. Of course, the policies are pretty similar, but we'll come back to that, why it is the case that we do not have a central education institution like you have in India and in many other countries. So the primary school is from around age 5 or 6 for 4 years or 6 years, depending on the individual states. And then for the secondary schools, for up to 10th, they typically go up to 10th standard. And then people who want to leave after 10th standard, they might go into some kind of apprenticeships. So we talked this morning about vocational education, and what is very, very typical for Germany, we have what is called the dual system. That means, let's say you want to take up an apprenticeship. You are apprenticed, for example, to a car maker, then you might be, so there's a gender bias. So the most sought after apprenticeships for boys are car mechanic, and the most sought after apprenticeships for women is hairdresser. So unfortunately, there's a gender bias, but we're working on this. So car mechanic, baker, plumber, but also shop assistants is also counted as an apprenticeship. So if you take up an apprenticeship, you go with a company, work for them, you get paid, but you also one day for every week you have to go to school. And in this school, so we have specific vocational teachers, you will also continue to learn English, German, mathematics, politics. So even as an apprentice, that's the dual part of the dual system. So there's still some kind of schooling going on, which is not only on the job. So you will, even though, let's say you want to be a car mechanic because you hate reading, you will still be exposed to some kind of literature, humanities. If you stay longer in school, then, oh, and by the way, apprenticeships and, for example, a job like electrician and car mechanics, they are very well paid and carry a lot of prestige. My cousin is an electrician. You can also become a master electrician, and then you have the right to train other apprentices. I think he earns more than I do, yes. When you continue to go that depends on the individual federal country, when you continue to go on to schools for grammar school, then for 12 or then after 12 or 13 years of schooling, you have your A levels, and then you can go to university. So we have a lot of universities which are again run by each federal, not by the government, come to the details later. Or we also have universities of applied sciences. So a lot of economics, engineering degrees, so you can go to a University of Applied Sciences. Humanities are typically in the proper universities, and so on. And it is now about half of each batch of each year in Germany go to a university. So it's still considered more prestigious, even though you might actually not earn as much later on, as much as a car mechanic, for example. Especially, as you said, if you are in the humanities and you're not becoming a teacher. So that might be the case, yeah. And when you are in these 3 last years of schooling, for your A levels, you have quite a choice. So you can select your major subjects, which gives you more credit points towards your A levels. But the system might be different for each federal state, but it is typically the case that you have to keep German, mathematics, one foreign language, and this would be for the majority of people English. So this is our main foreign language. Some others would be French or Latin, you know, the classical language of Europe, or Italian, but the main foreign language is English. Plus 1 natural science. So for example, I did my A levels in English, German, and social sciences. And then, of course, I had to keep all the other subjects. I also did biology, mathematics. I was actually quite good at mathematics, but that was a long time ago. Yeah. And we do not have central universities. So each university is funded by the federal government. We do not have central universities. We have central research institutes, for example, the Max Planck societies, which are funded by the central government, but each university is funded by the federal government. And we have in our constitution one Article 5, sentence number 3, which says, arts and sciences, research and teaching are free. This is part of our constitution, and why this is a part of our constitution is also part of why, as it says, arts and sciences have a special status. This is rooted in our history. I will come back to that. So one of the reasons after the Second World War, when the constitution was written in 1949, central institutions tend to breed elites, self-serving elites. You can actually see that in the UK, for example. I think almost everybody who is now in the government has studied either in Oxford or Cambridge. You can see it in France. So when almost everybody in the government or in the higher government administration post has studied in a specific school in Paris. So the idea was, as I said, I will come back to our history. The idea was to have a distribution of power, no central seat of power. And the universities, even though they're funded by the state, they are not directly ruled by the individual states. So we, for example, we vote for a senate and everybody can vote. So the professors, both teaching and non-teaching staff, get to vote for the senate. So even so the non-teaching staff, even the students, so they have student senators, and this senate then votes for the VC. And the VC is always a scholar. Might be one of our own, might be from somewhere else, but he or she is a scholar. It's not a political person. And if we don't like him or her, we can also vote them out of office. So there is a very strict, so the money comes from the government, but there is no direct interference in the terms of how the universities want to conduct their business by the government. We can...
Yes, there is audience sitting outside.
Yes. Can you hear me? Yeah. So this separation from the state and its politics and the universities is a very, very important and strong point, again, rooted in our history, to which I will come back. So every university decides their syllabi for themselves, their courses, which one course they want to offer, which, if you want to apply to university, makes it a little bit difficult because you all really have to look at every single program, what they're doing. So there's some exceptions. For example, if you want to study medicine, there's a very restricted number of places. Then you make one central application and then you're sent wherever there is a space. So the VC, we use the Latin term primus inter pares, means first among equal. So he's one of us. He's just a fellow professor who happens to be the VC. So there's not this kind of huge difference between the VC and everybody else. And now from this general overview of the structure, I would like to come to the reasoning behind this system. So why do we have this federal structure in almost all respects, very strongly in the education system? What is it good for? A lot of people are complaining. Let's say you have a family and you move from Berlin to Munich, then the kids are faced with a different system. So it is sometimes cumbersome, it takes a long time, decisions are made very slowly, perhaps not all exams are on the same level, but still we're working on it. But what is the reason for that? So we had, as I said, I already quoted from the Constitution, this was drawn up in 1949. And and I'm talking about West Germany here. So this was a time when the former Allied areas, Western Allied parts were already combining to form West Germany, and the former Soviet part became East Germany. So I'm born and raised in West Germany, so I'm talking about West Germany. And the main question or the main point of the German Constitution was never again. So I think who's the German professor? Yeah. So we are called, or we used to call ourselves das Volk der Dichter und Denker. Can you please translate that? Yeah, so the Germans prided themselves on being das Volk der Dichter und Denker. Yes, yes. So meaning the people of poets and thinkers. So we had Goethe, we had Johann Sebastian Bach. So we thought we are very, very cultural nation. Yes, yes, land of ideas.
Philosophy also, science is also department.
Yes, yeah.
That's why they say it's all equal.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and you see, we thought of ourselves as a very, very civilized people. And how could this very, very civilized people commit one of the worst crimes? So in Germany, we considered it's the single worst crime of the century, namely the Holocaust, the industrialized mass murder of the Jewish people. How could we bring the Second World War over the whole world? I know the enemies of your enemy are your friend. I think the Second World War might have a slightly different status in India. So you have the Indian National Army, and I think Subhash Chandra Bose was a good friend of Hitler. But how could Germans descend into this terrifying, singular mass murder? And so how can we prevent that in the futures? And one way of doing that was looking at, decentralize the state. So there should not be an opportunity that one government can control everything, including the universities, including the schools. And so I would like to come or bring one idea, which I find very important also for why we need the humanities. And this is a German scholar called Theodor W. Adorno. And he himself was a German Jew. And already in 1933, when the Nazis came into power, all the Jews were expelled from their university jobs. So that was the first brain drain and the first exodus in German universities. Many artists already left. If you're into film, people like Douglas Sirk, he was a German. So Marlene Dietrich, she was already in the US when the Nazis came into power, and she didn't come back. So a lot of talent. And these were the lucky ones. They knew they saw the signs of the signs, so they left in 33, and later on it became more difficult. And already in 44, with a friend, Max Horkheim, I wrote a book called Dialectics of Enlightenment. He was already under the impression of what was going on in the Second World War. So, and when it was published under this title, so one of the key notions, it's a very complex and complicated work, but one of the key notions was this idea, the criticism of what he called instrumental or instrumentalized reasoning. And this is a kind of reasoning which focuses on the means, but not the goals. So the emphasis is on how to do something, but you're not thinking about the why. You're just doing something because you're good at it. So it's a kind of technocrat, bureaucratic thinking, and you think of, yeah, I do it. I'm not thinking about why I'm doing it. So it functions perfectly, whatever the goal. And this, in an unfree society like Nazi time was at the time, this can be perverted. And there's one example, I don't know whether you've heard the name before. So there was a guy called Adolf Eichmann, and there's an interesting book by Hannah Arendt, a German philosopher, and it's called The Banality of Evil. And Adolf Eichmann was the organizer of the final solution. And he was caught, I think in the 60s only, then brought to justice in an Israeli court. And if you read these transcripts, he was always saying, well, he was responsible for how do you kill 20,000 people in one day. He was responsible for the logistics. He was responsible for the logistics of transporting, deporting millions of Jews to the concentration camps. How do you kill them most effectively? It was pure logistics. And this is how he saw his job. When he was on trial, he said, I'm just doing my job. I was just doing my job. And this is, I think, a very good example of a bureaucrat. This is instrumental reasoning. I'm good at it. Somebody told me to do it. I'm not thinking about the why. And Adorno and Horkheimer, they say now this kind of instrumental reasoning and societies need to be free. There needs to be freedom in society and enlightenment in the culture. And these have to go together to combat this kind of instrumental reasoning. So this was, in a way, under the immediate impression of this single disaster, catastrophe, mass murder in the German culture. And my parents were born in 1940, so they were kids, but I still grew up with these stories about internal displacement, about losing everything. So I might be the last generation who's still under this impression, but it is, if you want to understand Germany, if you also want to understand Germany's current position in the war of the Palestinians and Israel, then this is part of our legacy. And again, it's, I think, part of our jobs as humanities scholars to hold up this legacy. We can discuss about it later on, what you think about it, but this is part of who we are. And for example, so one immediate outcome was you said I come from the Freie University, the Free University, but after the war, there was also a new university set up in Berlin called the Technical University, and it was explicitly funded with a fully fledged humanities department. So there should not be only technocrats, they should always interact with humanities scholars so that this kind of instrumental reasoning without regard for what you are doing should not arise again. And so in general, if you follow this, if you're still with me in this line of reasoning, and this is experience, as I said, this is a very local, on the one hand, small experience. We're a small country, but then we brought evil and disaster in the Second World War over so many countries. So it's not small, it has worldwide effects. So following this reasoning, I am fully convinced that only free societies and cultures are sustainable. So only if we are free as a society, as a culture, and free does not mean free to do whatever I want without regard to somebody else. Free means free critical thinking about the consequences of my actions. That's what I consider free. And in order to become or remain free as individuals, I think I'm fully convinced that we need the humanities. Why? So, for example, we need to engage with everybody, with the technical, natural sciences, and engineering sciences. So we need to reflect on, we need to be able to reflect critically on, upon our past and our future. And for this, we need history, sociology, philosophy. And we need to engage with our desires and emotions. For that, we need arts, literature. And we need to understand ourselves and our neighbors. And after all, we only fear what we do not know. So what is the best way of getting to know each other? So not everybody can travel everywhere, but we can read other people's books. We can take their stories, compare them to our own. So literature and cultural studies. And there might also be biases in our societies. There certainly are. All societies have specific biases. And if you want to overcome them in order to share our freedom with everybody in societies, we might need gender studies, we might need Dalit studies, so that everybody's experience is represented and we can talk about that. And one more thing, we have one major challenge ahead of us, that's climate change. And we will only, I'm fully aware of the fact that, again, the West has caused it, and the non-industrialized or developing countries have the main brunt to take for that. But despite that, this is a global challenge, and we will only solve it together. And that is, we must talk to each other, and we must respect each other's viewpoint, and we must respect each other's culture. And we also need, in this age and time, we need to combat misinformation, fake facts, unjust claims, and also fear-mongering. And I think you have this motto, unity in diversity. Is that right? So this is what we are. Humans are unity in diversity. So we may look different, we have different cultures, we have different festivals, but I think we all want a better life for our children. And it is the humanities which are essential in negotiating that diversity and also in cherishing, I think, our essential unity. So this is what I would like to say about that, and I would be very interesting to hear what your perspective is. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Lange, for a very brief but a very clear account of how humanities and social sciences education is available in Germany. I was really fascinated by some of the things that you said. Some of it sounds almost, unreal to us here, as you very well know. For example, the fact that the German constitution ensures that education is free. I mean, it's there in the constitution itself. That seems amazing. But you also spoke about how committed the German education system is in producing free critical thinkers. I think that is a very, very important dimension of education. I believe we also started out very, very similarly in India. Our founding fathers of Indian Democratic Republic had very similar ideals as well, but somewhere on the line, perhaps we have lost track. Perhaps that is the reason why we seems to be facing the kind of crisis that we are facing. So, friends, Professor Lange, some of my students are very, very young. They have just entered into graduation, and some others also perhaps haven't had the occasion to reflect on the field that they have chosen to pursue. So some of you perhaps are, listening to something of this kind, a critical reflection on what we are doing, this arts education that we are undertaking. What is it that we are doing and why we are doing and where we are, where is it taking us to? Perhaps you haven't had many occasions to do that. So Professor Lange's lecture, I hope, her intervention, I hope, will facilitate will start you onto that kind of a thinking. But if you have any question about any aspect of the education system in Germany that you would like to know more about, you can ask her, number one. But I also request my colleagues from other departments and other colleges who are with me to share their perceptions. You don't necessarily have to ask questions. You can even share your views, and that's how we will proceed further, right? Sachin, would you like to say something before?
No, while all these wise heads on young shoulders are thinking of questions and comments, maybe I'll give you some buffer time and add some comments in between. So right now we are all going through this transition period because the central government introduced new education policy 2020, and Maharashtra seems to be on top of all the states with its enthusiasm, at least the enthusiasm of the authorities of the universities to implement this program. Not fully understanding what exactly we are doing and where we are heading with this policy. It will take quite some time, but I actually wanted to share this and would like you to have some reflections on the system that we are introducing now, where whether you are in humanities or social sciences or sciences, the students have to have certain skill sets developed, like your abilities. So the courses like sciences, it is easy to come up with courses which have skill base. Now we have courses in humanities like philosophy, history. I'll spare sociology and economics because they have a lot to do with certain skill sets. So how do we tackle problems like these, and do we necessarily make all courses in humanities skill based? Do we really design courses? Do we change or modify our curriculum to make our young generation employable? Because that is what the new education policy seems to be emphasizing on. So what would be your take on this, bringing skill set to humanities? Will that reduce the intensity with which we engage subjects in humanities like literature or history or philosophy? What would be your take on this?
Yeah. First of all, Germany is a completely opposite situation to India. So I was just very envious when Sachin told me the age of retirement has actually been lowered in India to 60, and in Germany it has been raised by 2 years to 67. Why is that? Because we have not enough young people. We are getting older, like many industrialized societies. So there are way more older people than younger people. So if you are a young person right now in Germany, you are bound to get a job, any job. So when I started studying and somebody said, "Oh, you study English, okay, you will end up being a taxi driver, but you will get no job." And this has changed completely. What I keep telling my students in general, so most of our students, more than 85% of our students become teachers. And that is a very well-paid profession. So either primary school teachers are now very high in demand. They also do a little bit of English, but mainly English singing songs, but they graduate in English. So if you want to become a teacher, no problem. I mean, people will either have, if you have a specific combinations like English and mathematics, schools will send headhunters after you. So no problem getting a job. But also our bachelor and master students now get very good jobs. Some work for specific programs in the university administration. But what I keep telling my students in general, if you have a humanities degree, you have two things. You have self-organization and you have a high frustration tolerance. So because you have to tell your parents who are going to nag you, what are you going to do with your major in philosophy? And they say, just wait. Yeah. So, and this self-organization, I always give an example. So with the skills you have, without us designing a skills course, but you're negotiating the whole bachelor and master's degree. So you have self-organization, high frustration tolerance, you know how to handle information. Let's say you are the personal secretary of some member of parliament or so, and this person says, you have 2 days to give me an overview of the history of Iran, so get to it. And you've never heard of that before. So, but your way of handling information, your knowledge of languages will help you to find this task. So I'm a bit critical about you say so specific skill sets like teaching. What are you teaching? Making to do TikTok videos?
YouTube videos, I definitely do that in my
Yeah,
classroom.
which is a good thing. But I mean, if you just take half an hour of your time, you can do it yourself. On top. So I think we are quite what we call skills here in Germany. It's sometimes called competences. So we are not supposed to disseminate knowledge, but competences. So that this discussion, this dialogue, this discourse is around as well. But still, there are a lot of people who say, "Well, I just want to study art because I'm interested in it." But again, this pressure of finding a job on your generation is much lower in Germany because everybody's bound to get a job. We can just invite you to come and get a good job in Germany. The only obstacle is the German language, but you have a teacher here.
Can we say that in Germany, humanities field, there is, we can say that Eastern culture have impact on humanities in Germany. Can we say that?
Yeah.
Eastern means Orientalist scholars are there.
Yes, we have some centers, for example, Heidelberg, Leipzig, so where Indian languages are studied and other languages are studied. They are not as widely spread, but we have some which have a very long tradition, which go back to the 18th century only. Yeah.
Means we can say that Eastern culture have impact in
Yes,
humanities
yes,
in Germany.
yes.
I wouldn't know if it is an impact of Eastern cultures or it is just the presence of Eastern culture. Because they are into Oriental studies. I mean, like you have Indology studies in
That's
Heidelberg
right, yeah.
University.
Yeah. I mean, if you mean impact on society, I think what is very, very sought after in Europe is yoga. All sorts different kinds of yoga. So some is only for sports, but some is also the whole philosophy behind it. And so there's quite a lot of people who are very interested in that aspect, the philosophical aspect of it as well. Yeah.
Is Indian food popular in Germany?
Yes, very. But it's not as good as over here. It's basically Punjabi food without the spices.
But still, the Chinese food perhaps outranks Indian food.
Sorry?
Chinese food is more popular than
You could say since the latest wave of immigration is Vietnamese people, and that is more popular than Chinese food. It's also more varied. But Indian food is going strong, and we now get more and more because it was very meat based. We now get more Indian veg food as well, and more South Indian. Yeah.
So you can say like what we have done to pizza in India, you have done that to pakodas in
True.
Germany. You wouldn't like to eat pakodas in Germany, and you wouldn't like to eat pizza in India.
And I think one of the reasons we have more, let's say, more authentic Indian restaurants is we have also more Indians coming either as tourists, but also as scholars and students. So there are a couple of universities that I know which have a very active exchange program. I know Symbiosis in Pune has an exchange program with an University of Applied Sciences for an MBA program, and you frequently see whole batches of Indian students in the bigger cities. Good morning, sir.
I have one just curiosity actually. That nowadays, all over the world, even in India also, the same thing is that the addiction of 1.5 GB per day. So that 1.5 GB, that train is here. But most of the humanity student from humanity, I think they are suffering from it. Though we can use the data to increase the creative thinking, to access the Nobel peoples, but rather than most of the data, they are destined to the nonsense world. So it is the same trend is there in University of Germany that the students they are addicted 1.5 GB or more than that also, or they are using this data to develop to create something productive.
Yeah. You would be surprised. Wi-Fi or data is much cheaper in India than it is in Germany. but a lot of people have Wi-Fi at home, or the students' hostel have free Wi-Fi. What I find is, I mean, these enormous opportunities that we have through the digital media. I mean, I've not been in my library for a long time because we have all the books available digitally. I can access all the international journals digitally. I can just download them to my laptop. But our students are not doing that. They download some crap from Google and then tell me, oh, I found this in the Indonesian Journal of Applied Linguistics, which is what we call a predatory journal, which is not peer reviewed. So the absolutely mind-boggling opportunities. We have so many digitization projects, so you can via early English books online, you can read the Shakespeare folio online. You can search it. So we have access to that. But the more that we actually have, I have the feeling that the students, the less are using that, and they're using that for misinformation, for TikTok and these kind of things. And I would agree, this is, I think, a problem, and this is also something we should critically accompany and negotiate as humanities scholars. We cannot say, do never use your cell phone in class. When I teach, I typically design exercises with cell phones or laptops where I direct people at using the right kind of information. Please explore this. And again, we need to foster this idea, how do I find sound information? What kind of websites, what kind of articles are relevant? Which ones are good? Which one are propaganda? And this is an additional challenge we have. I would say that as well, yeah.
I think I'll be diverting from your point of Germany, and perhaps speak on a more global perspective. I mean, especially in the recent times, we see that humanities is kind of, I wouldn't say failing, but we are also kind of, people especially, political spheres are kind of ignoring the role of humanities in many spaces. We see the recent conflicts and everything. What are your predictions as to how humanity might be helping, or perhaps, like how do you think, how do you see this going in the future years? What would be the role of humanities? Like, how will it be able to cement itself? I mean, we know the roles that humanity plays. It's essentially important. It is perhaps the foundation of our society, humanities. But where do you see us going in the longer run?
Yeah, you're quite right. So on a global scale, in Europe we see a rise in right-wing nationalism.
We see in
the US, yes,
right now,
yes.
It's not a new thing.
Mm.
It keeps on happening. It keeps on
True.
coming back in different parts of the world in different ways. We
Yes.
see the Rwandan genocide, so many things. But where do you see us as humanities scholars, as academia, kind of going forward?
Yeah, I think we need to, and I think this is something I also underestimated. I thought reason would always, in a way, find its own way, but it doesn't. We've seen that in US politics, so that, as I said, fake news, and that people are basing their decisions who to vote for on emotions and not on facts. And I think what we can do is perhaps be a little bit more self-confident. If somebody comes up to you and says something and you say, well, this is not true and these are my facts. You might not listen to them, but we need not to stop talking about facts. We need not to stop about reasons. We need not to stop to say, well, this is ideology and I can show you where it comes from. It comes from a specific history, a specific point of view. And the other person might not listen, but I think right now in Germany, we have a very strong movement against a specific right-wing party, which is always going on telling lies and says, oh, the foreigners are overrunning us. And so you find that in many European countries.
We see that in Italy. We see that
Yes,
right
yes. But there's now an unprecedented number of Germans who are going to demonstrate against that, and they're holding posters, and this is, there are facts. And hate is not an opinion.
So this will keep on happening.
Yes.
We'll keep on fighting.
Yeah.
Fight against
Yeah.
this. So this is like
I think we just have
another
to not stop. Yeah. Bring our expertise and also our, as I say, our high level of frustration tolerance to that prospect. Yeah.
But how do we, like, whenever this happens, is that I've seen this in India.
Yes.
And something I kind of keep on, again, as professors mentioned, keep on happening again and again, is that I keep on trying to justify my position with my friends who are doing
Yes.
engineering or
Yes.
science people, basically, if I may call them.
Yeah.
But even PhD scholars from science departments. So I think it's like a continuous struggle, kind of making our voices known, bringing our own capability.
But I see you're doing the right thing. I mean, it might be exhausting for you after a long time, but
A little, yeah, you can say, because my friends, especially from the engineering departments, and even PhD scholars, most of them are from the physics department. So they kind of have these questions as to what is, like, research in English going to give you, like, even in books, that's all you do.
What do you do in the afternoon? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you just read books,
Yeah.
you watch movies, and what else? You don't do anything. So, yeah, again,
How is that real knowledge?
Yeah.
Yes.
How is that
Yeah,
real
yeah.
knowledge? What are you actually doing? Have you made this robot, or have you done this? Have you made this card? Like,
Have you asked them what is your robot good for? What's it doing? Or are you just doing it because you can? That would be instrumentalized reasoning. I built this because I can, and not why.
I also realize that they have a lack of ethical understanding of what their thing might do.
Yeah.
Like, I have a friend who made a robot. And she doesn't understand the implications of what that robot might be capable of. Or what. She says, you're like, you're just talking, but it's not what exactly that is. I just wanted to say.
Yeah. No, that's a very good example. So what is the robot good for? It might make so and so many 100,000 people unemployed. Is that a good thing? And if you just make the robot because you can, that's instrumentalized reasoning. And she really needs you to remind you what might her parents think? Might it make her parents unemployed or somebody else she knows? Yeah.
You have a question.
So I have a question. With the age of AI, how will impact literature work in Germany, and what are German thinking about?
Sorry, I didn't get the beginning.
With the age of AI, how it
Oh,
will
yeah.
affect the literature work?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it does affect teaching in the sense that you can't stop people using ChatGPT. So I had the first term papers written with ChatGPT, and they were crap. And now we're trying to tell our students you can use it if you want to reformulate some paragraph that it sounds a little bit nicer, gives you more options, but it cannot do your thinking. It cannot do your thinking. You still have to do the thinking for yourself. Because it also generates false knowledge. And again, you need to have the same qualities that you would have without AI. You need to be able to distinguish false knowledge and proper knowledge. And you still have to do your own thinking. I think it will probably in all humanities department, we will sooner or later have to change the way we do examinations. We will have to have more oral examinations and less written examinations. So, for example, we do a lot of term papers, and there, I think the seduction of AI will be very strong, which then gives me more work finding that. But again, nobody can do the thinking for you. You have to do it yourself.
And as you said, you talk about free society.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we say that this society is totally free, and what are those points we can say that by this points, yeah, this society is totally free?
Well, I don't know whether there's a totally free society, but I think one of the important points for a society to be free is that there's a separation of power between the legislative and the jurisdiction. This is also part of our constitution, and this works, I think, from my perspective, works very well. We need a free press, so we need to be able to argue without fear. So we need to be able to play out contradictory ideas in the public sphere. If we are afraid of talking to each other because somebody might report you, then we are no longer free. So we need to be able to pursue our ideas. Of course, there are limits to that. For example, if I say something unconstitutional, I might get prosecuted. So my freedom ends at your freedom. That should be quite obvious. Yeah. But I think a free jurisdiction and a free press are very, very essential elements of a free society. Because if you, in a way, put a lid on discussion, then that's not good.
Online question by Dr. Swati Roke. She asks, to what extent does the influx of millions of migrants impact the socio-cultural linguistic landscapes in Germany?
Yeah, it has had a lot of influx. Things in 2015, we had more than 1 million people from Syria coming. Right now, we have also more than 1 million people, war refugees from Ukraine. These are typically young women with their children. The men are not supposed to leave the country, they have to fight. And this has had multiple impacts. So the first wave was compassion and help. And then after a while, there was this feeling there are too many younger people coming. So the Syrian refugees are mainly younger men. coming from a different cultural and linguistic background. Many of them took courses in German and are now have jobs, but they also get social benefits. And this, in a way, shifted, you could say, unfortunately, shifted the discussion in Germany more to the right, in the sense of there may be too many. There's this discrepancy. Some people say there are too many people coming. On the other hand, we do not have enough people in the workforce. So. So it has affected the political process in Germany. So we have grown by, I think, more than 3 million people, which is a lot for a small country. And in many areas, it is very nice. It is a cultural enrichment. But in some areas, it also has led to some kind of, well, not exactly ghettos, but we have whole streets, for example, in Berlin, where you only have Arab shops. And some people cherish that, and some people feel a little bit overwhelmed.
Thank you, ma'am, for the wonderful lecture. Actually, I had one thing to ask. A lot of people would actually like to study humanities, but the basic problem is the employability. If I have an engineering degree or a science degree, then I'd sure get a job. But if I have MA in political science, there are very less chances for me to get a job. This is the situation in India. That is why there is a lack of research and new development in the political science per se and humanities. What is the situation if a person is graduated or post-graduated and had a doctoral degree in humanities? Do he get the job, or do still he has to search something? And the technical streams, they are rising in India. That is why the humanities is a little bit down. We don't like that. We
I get your point.
humanities.
Definitely,
So if I'm in Germany, if I have an MA in political science and I'm a doctorate, do I have the opportunity of employment there?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So if you have, let's say, political science or English or sociology, so you might, well, I had a lecturer position to fill in the English department. I had a problem finding somebody. So everybody I approached, one was working with the Dresden Museum, as on a higher administrative level. Another one was already had a job somewhere else. So people get good jobs. They might have to search a little bit longer. So for teacher, the career is very well planned. So we have a structure for that, and they have to go do practical teacher training. So that's set. But you might have to search a little bit longer. We also have this option of, after your BA, you can change your university. For example, you can do a BA in political science and then change. We also have the European Union. Then you can go to study in the Netherlands and do an MA in international relations on top of that. But these, right now, everybody finds a job. So this is quite unlike India.
I have a question. Students who are studying humanities, I heard that art house or these type of things which are arranged for old generation, so they have various social benefits, but I couldn't get the details that what social benefits do they get.
Students, you mean?
Students of humanities, when they contribute to old houses or
what do you mean?
art house,
Old
old homes.
Probably it's part of the education system where the students have to do, right?
Oh, I see. I don't think there's a specific provision in place that students get specific benefits. So everybody who is trained or wants to volunteer for that can do that, but it's no special program that you as a student get special benefits for that. Yeah.
So I will very basic question. As Professor Rod suggested, started with the problems in Indian higher education system is that those who are graduating are finding problem with employment. And on the other hand, you said that it's very important for state or society to, engender a critical reflection, which probably the humanities as a discipline can, help in developing. And so my question is related to both, in the sense that what is the basic purpose of humanities or social sciences education? Is it instrumental purpose in terms of the education is a means to an end in terms of finding employment, or it should be for the sake of it, for knowledge sake, gathering knowledge and developing a critical reflection, as you said in your presentation.
Yeah, I mean, this does. In the societies we live, I mean, we don't have societies like in ancient Greece where you could be a philosopher and live happily ever after. And this also wouldn't work for half the room because this was only a career for men at the time. I think it doesn't have to be a total opposite. I think if you want to study the humanities and be a humanities scholar, your main contribution to yourself and to society can be your critical mind, your knowledge of things past and present, your knowledge of the arts, what it tells us about ourselves, how this contributes to our culture, and you still have to find some way of getting paid for that. So there's probably you will channel your skills in the one direction when you want to become a journalist or a teacher, but the whole skill set as a humanities scholar will still be there, and you have a choice of how much you want to bring of that to your future job, I would say. So I wouldn't say this is a total opposite. As I said, in Germany, you can say, I want to study English and German and want to become a teacher, then your career is set. But still, even within that idea, you can choose to engage more critical with specific aspects of English cultural studies, of linguistics. So you still have a choice, I would say. But again, I speak from a mostly German perspective. I recognize that the Indian perspective has very, very different set. I think you have millions of graduates every year, I think, across the country.
Is typically true of our situation.
Yeah.
May I add something? I mean, it's not exactly relevant to your question or your comment, but since this is just an observation that in India, at least, our education system has been quite biased when it comes to humanities or those who are studying humanities. In the sense, there was a time when there's still that time exists where if you are a student of humanities, you cannot actually have any course coming from, say, commerce or any course from science. It's just blocked for you. Whereas they are very considerate when it comes to IITs, when it comes to technical institutes. IITians, engineers, they have to have some humanities courses. Why? Like obviously they do understand and underline the importance of humanities, that they should have the humanities side to their personalities. But then those who are studying humanities, they did not have the option of studying sciences. And I think that is how it was biased, and somewhere there is a possibility of opening these options, which had been blocked till now, because the bias is not only against humanities but those who study humanities. Like probably you do not really have the kind of IQ to study sciences, and that's why that's not your cup of tea, and you just study humanities. Somewhere we need to come out of that bias and then create this interdisciplinary approach, and probably that will also change things, because that's what I understand from like our discussion in Germany. If you are probably pursuing your bachelor's or master's with English as your major, you might also be doing a minor in mathematics or statistics or some science like natural science or applied science. This is just not possible right now in India, and I think that would also open more opportunities for the students, like which right now are blocked. As Professor Lange was saying, that if you have English major and mathematics minor, the people would be after you to look for jobs or like to hire your services. So possibly these combinations might be something that we could try. I do not know if NEP 2020 promises that. It does to some extent with the open electives, and it does that. I mean, it's quite an experimental stage. Yeah. Yes.
Don't know how we will be able to have this kind of combined courses, and where are we going to
Yeah.
get the resources from?
And on top of it, we are not even trained to handle interdisciplinary approach to curriculum.
I wanted to raise a point about the concept of critical thinking and how it is commonly understood in Japan. Because as a teacher of humanities, I teach English language and literature, I find that the thinking part is slowly going to disappear from our humanities. I mean, the government, to speak very openly, does not want us to think in critical terms. And, they don't want us to be criticizing the situation that we are facing. And therefore, the situation right now on the ground level is this, that students simply take some kind of resource from the internet and they just copy paste it in the examination. So they don't go through the process of thinking about the subject, about the concepts that they are learning. That's why I say that slowly, in my view, slowly disappearing from the scene of education. So what is the situation there in Germany? And I don't mean to say that the concept or the critical theory per se, but I want to understand how a common German person may think about the significance of critical thinking in his or her everyday life and how it empowers the German citizens.
Yeah, and of course I cannot speak for whole of Germany. I can just offer some observations. You see, the German education system is also very much geared from the 19th century's ideas of Wilhelm von Humboldt. We still have Humboldt University in Berlin, and this was about education is for you, for your own sake. And that also means research for your own sake. So it doesn't have to have some practical applied part. My parents used to say to me, what you have in your head, nobody can take from you. So in that sense, they were okay with me studying a loser thingy like English so at the time. So because it's about you, what you want, and not employability at the time, which was very brave at the time. And I would say, and I would agree with you today, see many people in the younger generation who do not really care for education. They tell you they want to be a star on YouTube. They want to be an influencer. And this again, is one of the things about social media. They might make you famous and rich very, very quickly. So you can be an influencer without ever having studied journalism, and people will listen to you. They will click you. I don't know how long this will last, but this is a danger towards a proper education to critical thinking. Yeah, could say originally perhaps YouTube and TikTok were democratic because everybody could raise their voices. But I don't see that they are fostering democracy now. They are just fostering a specific way of misinformation. So I would agree in general, it's not that the government is discouraging critical thinking, it's quite a lot of people find it very cumbersome to think critically.
Thank you for a very nice and engaging conversation. I'm sorry for my voice, it's so cold. A couple of points. One was about this whole aspect of employability and education. And as I can see in the room, there is a feeling that those who are coming from humanities or social sciences do not stand an opportunity of employability as good as those who come from, let's say, engineering and medicine or some such science backgrounds. To some extent, it is true, but it is also, I think, a problem of partial information that we keep receiving all the time. So we know only about those engineers, for instance, who are employed. We simply don't know about those engineers who are never employed. And that number is also standing at something like 75%. Every 3 in 4 engineers hardly get an employment or get an employment which is not a dignified employment. That is one. So it's not that employments are really there in science and technology when there are no employments in humanities. That is one we need to remember, that we need not only talk about employment, we should also talk about employment with dignity, and that is something which is almost totally missing. In fact, this year there were news from Indian Institute of Technologies, India's most premier technology institutes, supported completely by the state. Even IITs did not have full placement on the campus, which is a shock for the IITs. So, if there is a crisis, it's a crisis overall. It's not only pertaining to humanities, that is one. Second point I just wanted to bring to the floor was mostly when we feel that I am from humanities or social sciences and I will not be employable, one of the reasons is the quality of education that we get in general. So even if I went to, let's say, social sciences, political sciences, as somebody was saying here, for my graduation and PG and for my research, until my 10th or 11th, 12th grade, I have had all common subjects. The problem here is that the kind of education that I get for those common subjects as well is really of a compromised quality in the best scenarios what I would see. And therefore, I don't feel confident that I can do something beyond my own discipline. That's one problem, and that problem is getting aggravated because of the withdrawal of the state from education. If you look at in India, and since I study education both for my interest as well as my profession, I can say that in India, the government is now almost completely withdrawing itself from education. We do have a constitutional provision of fundamental education as a fundamental right, only the first 8 years of education, which is there in almost entire region where you come from. But we don't have any provision of education or any onus lying on the government thereafter. And even the compulsory education that we are supposed to get, the kind of quality is really worrisome. And that's because of the withdrawal of the government. And I see that this phenomenon of withdrawal of the government, and there will be a question for you about this. At least to the best of my understanding, it's a part of the global scenario, or to put it in other terms, the American dream getting universalized. Okay, the American dream, which is basically related to incessant profit making from everything that comes to us, and all these technological helps that came to us, like Facebook and YouTube, which were first in a very European way were looked at as ways of emancipating us and tools of strengthening the democracy. Within decades' time, we have just come to the other sector, and now the view is totally dystopian. And the recent hearing that went on in the US Senate about all these social media companies, that's a case in point. So, what I'm thinking is this American dream getting universalized, the so-called managerial turn in education, where the control of the educational institutes is now with managements, and educational institutes have now become centers of governance than education. So you will be graded depending on how you are governed, not what you are producing. And NAC is one of those entities in India, National Accreditation System, and that is so much more relying on the governance than the actual academics. Given this scenario, how is it impacting Germany, particularly global situations, where managers are managing everything? Recently, there were media reports in India about how the big four auditing companies are sitting everywhere in all ministries. They have made such inroads that, for example, you are an academic, you want to talk to the education ministry, it's very difficult unless you really cross the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper will be an auditor. This is the reality of education in India, and from my experience and from my own professional background, I would also say easily that that is getting percolated across the globe. I have done a small diploma in Finnish education in Helsinki University, and this is that there is another question that there is a two-way kind of route when one crosses 9th grade in most of the North European region. When you complete compulsory schooling till 9th or 8th grade, and then you take a route, there is one route that takes you to the skill-based kind of education that you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation. Now, if one chooses that, one is supposed to be kind of deprived of the humanities knowledge that one would get in a university system. At least in Finland, I saw that as a lament, the national lament for the country. What is the situation of that kind of choice? If I make a choice to become a plumber or an electrician, will I also be entitled to take humanities and social science knowledge of a student who has opted for university education? So two questions for you and the rest for comments. Question one is about this choice, and the earlier question was about universalization of the American dream and the managerial curve in education. How is it impacting the university education in Germany?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sorry for being a little long.
No, that's very interesting. Thank you very much for your insights. The Northern European countries, especially Finland, are frequently held up as a model for schools in Germany because they do not have this separation into secondary and grammar school. So everybody studies together up to 9th grade, as you correctly said. And this seems to be better. And this is one of the things that are being discussed in Germany. So having the kids learn longer together, but again, this will take a long time changing because of our federal system. There's a lot of stakeholders there. When you, as I said, when you take up an apprenticeship and then go for 3 more years to school, so you will have humanities education, but up to A level, not up to university standard. But this will be continued. Yeah. And in terms of the commodification or this kind of neoliberalist turn in university education or in education in general, this has been around for quite some time in Europe. I can't deny that. So we all have this, everything gets quantified now. So research output gets quantified, how many third-party funding I get gets quantified. And so frequently my position as a lecturer or my esteem as a lecturer, as a university professor, is more about how much money I bring in rather than how good I am at teaching. And then we are at a strategic disadvantage, because what do we need as humanities scholars? I keep saying I might need a pen, a library ticket, perhaps a laptop, some power, that's it. And some of my colleagues in the chemical department, they need machines which cost 2 lakhs before they can even start working. So they always look grander than we do. That's quite right. But I think this commodification, there is, well, at least in the European Union, there's a little bit of resistance to that, because we acutely feel, and we felt that even more in the COVID crisis, that all the online learning tools were American. We didn't have any of our own. We were actually not allowed to use Microsoft Teams because of the European Union has a specific data protection guideline which does not allow us to use Microsoft Teams. We had our own, we developed our own, but I'm also aware that many countries cannot afford not to use Microsoft. But the European Union is now acutely aware that all the big tech companies are American, as you said, Microsoft, Google. So if they shut Europe off their servers, it would get dark in our education institutions. So I think at least there are now some efforts to say there's also an open AI program called Mistral, so which is open source. So trying to find something, to at least counterbalance and get a little bit more independent. This managerial thinking is still around, but given the fact that at least universities are so independent, so we can still hold up against this, at least for a while, I think.
Okay, just one point from India. Since you said that this entire technology is owned by the US companies, one example from India, which is, what mentioned here, is the state of Kerala, South Indian state of Kerala. Kerala, recently I attended a program in Kerala which was celebrating 20 years of digital education in Kerala, which is, if you compare with many of the Indian states, it's way ahead of the Indian states. And the entire system is open source system. And now they have also started to launch their own social media. So it will be their own social media by the government, and it will, get rid of all the social media that we have. So right from storage of the information to the algorithms that are actually pushing content to us, that will perhaps be in the state of Kerala. Now, of course, one can debate whether state-owning social media is better than a private entity owning, but nonetheless, there is an answer to that. That's what I just wanted to mention.
And this also links back to what you said. So you see there are always some good examples. So a whole state is going a specific way, and you think, hey, I'm not alone.
Right. I know that there are more questions or comments that some of you would want to enter in, but I think we need to also get going. So let me take the opportunity to once again thank Professor Lange on behalf of all of you for her gracious presence with us in this session, and also for the introduction and insight that she gave to the situation in Europe and in Germany specifically, about something that we are all very well present about. And I also would like to thank all of you who are present here, students as well as my colleagues. Thank you for this wonderful session.
Thank you.